Yep, it's officially recording. And let's see if people are jumping in. Still waiting. Okay, people are starting to hop in. Let's just give it another 30 seconds. Okay, Ben, I think we can get started. I mean, people will continue to join us and I'll update them in the chat, but you can go ahead.
Great. Thanks, Akrit. Hello, everybody. I'm Ben Hoyne with Solar United Neighbors, based out of Richmond, Virginia, joined today by my colleague, Sakrit Mishra, who is based in the Washington, D.C. area and helps support us on the back end, and our partner, Ruth Amundsen, who is in Norfolk, and as part of the Norfolk Solar Fund, amongst other ventures. So thanks very much for joining us today. This is the Hampton Roads Solar and Electric Vehicle, or EV Charger Co-op information session. We'll be here for about an hour. We'll have time for Q&A, whatnot, but certainly thrilled to have you all here. Let's see if I can get my slides to advance. There we go. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Want to make sure that you have your audio muted. I actually can't see you. I can just see the three of us. And I will also can't see the chat, but Sakrit will be monitoring the chat, and that is a great place to place questions. Additionally, we'll stop from time to time at convenient places to ask for questions. I also want to make sure everybody's aware that this is being recorded, which you should have seen on your way in. So what is Solar United Neighbors? We are a vendor-neutral national 501c3 nonprofit. We're unaffiliated with any company or product. We really rely entirely upon the community engagement and involvement. We've got programs in 12 states, and we help people nationwide also through our help desk services. You certainly can contact us at any time with questions. And really, we bring people together to address barriers to information, to red tape, permitting, technology, policy, and so much more. And we really strive to represent solar owners and consumers, as well as prospective solar owners and consumers. We got started back in 2007 in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Our founder, Anya Schoolman, who's in the photo there, began Solar United Neighbors when her son, Walter, who's on the left in that photo, and his friend, Diego, who's on the right, saw the movie An Inconvenient Truth, came home and said, "Mom, we have to go solar." Well, Anya looked into it and quickly found out that going solar in 2007 in Washington, D.C. was not very easy at all. Through her son and Diego going door to door, they enlisted the help of about 50 neighbors to untangle the complicated process. There was only 2 companies working in D.C. at the time. They heard different things about basics, such as how do you install solar on your roof, how much it costs, what kind of equipment to use, taxes, regulation, permits, and on down the line. This group met almost weekly for 2 years, and eventually 45 homes in the neighborhood went solar. After this, started getting press attention, and Anya started getting calls from folks all over the country that wanted to organize similar solar co-ops. So Sun really got started organically in that fashion in 2007. As I mentioned, we're now in 12 states. We have members in all 50 states. We have staff in 12 states. Or programs in 12 states. We've run over 300 solar co-ops across the country. We've got about 50 staff spread across 4 time zones. And specifically in Virginia, again, so nationwide, we've helped over 6,000 families go solar, and it's helped install 54 megawatts, over 54 megawatts of solar on rooftops across the country. And that's the equivalent of a utility scale sized solar power plant on individual rooftops. In Virginia, we've helped over 1,100 families and helped install over 8 megawatts. We also work on policies at the General Assembly, the State Corporation Commission, local municipalities, various commissions to expand solar rights and access, increase solar deployment. And we're also working towards an equitable energy system. We know that rooftop solar lets communities invest locally, creates good local jobs, and brings control of the energy system within our reach. We're working towards a new energy system that everyone can participate in, one that is fair and equitable. This is our organizational vision or theory of change. Again, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. First and foremost, we help folks go solar, and we'll talk a lot about that through our co-op and other things. And we join together like this. We also have happy hours and other events and in-person information sessions and all sorts of stuff, so that solar owners, prospective solar owners, can chat and come together to break bread over solar. And then we fight for energy rights. We are a nonpartisan organization. We know that solar energy is free and that the government or a monopoly utility company should not restrict your access to it. And that's a message that really resonates across party lines in the Commonwealth. So, and as more laws are passed and more people have access to solar, the cycle continues. So what we'll talk about today is how solar co-ops work, what's, specifically the Hampton Roads Solar Co-op. We'll talk about the basic technology, batteries, electric vehicle chargers, and we'll talk about the economics of solar, how to finance solar, and some exciting work that Ruth is doing. So how solar co-ops work. What is a solar co-op? At its most basic, a solar co-op is a voluntary buying group that leverages discounts. So we're a large group, and we ask for a kind of a bulk discount in essence. This is the best value on installation. Our job is to give you the tools to make an informed decision. We don't make the decision for you. Really, we just want to be here and educate you. We support you throughout the process of going solar. We help connect you with fellow solar enthusiasts and, again, become part of a growing solar movement. There is no obligation at all. It's free to join the co-op. You're not required to sign a contract and install solar. That's a decision you'll make down the line once you have an actual bid for installation from a solar installer. It's important to note the group does have a beginning and an end, and this co-op pricing is limited. The group does stay open, I think, until November. So certainly we have plenty of months ahead of us. But if you were to, ask in 12 months or something, if you could still get the co-op pricing, wouldn't be able to do that. But it should be open for the next several months. Once you actually get a proposal in hand, which is probably a few months from now, you'll have 30 days to make a decision on whether you want to go forward with solar or not. And I'll ask Sakrit to drop our solar co-op guide into the chat. Kind of the timeline for the co-op process, and really this is a stakeholder-driven process. We really encourage folks to participate in it. Learning is a very big part. We're in months 1 and 2 right now, very early stages, so you all are getting in on the ground floor, which is great. Learning about the co-op, you're doing number 1, attending an information session right now. Hopefully you've all signed up for the co-op. If not, I encourage you to do so. It's free. And also would like you to spread the word. Invite your neighbors and friends to join. And we actually have some yard signs you can put in your yard if you're interested in. I'll be dropping those off in Hampton Roads probably in August. And we'll be getting those out and about in the Hampton Roads area. We'll help screen your roof once you sign up, and determine if your roof is a good fit for solar. In about month 3 or so, which is going to happen, I think in August, we will be selecting the installer, and I say we, it really should be you will be selecting the installer, a group of folks that are interested. So if you're interested in reviewing the bids that we get from local solar installers in the Hampton Roads area, and other folks that are part of the co-op that are also interested, we'll meet some evening over Zoom, and we'll walk through all the bids, whether it's 2 bids or 6 bids or what have you. And usually it takes a couple hours on a weeknight evening, and we'll run through the nuts and bolts of a solar proposal, and you'll really be highly educated on how to review that. And that'll be how we select the solar installer for the entire group. There will be a menu of options, so to speak. You might have a base model package, a mid-level, and a premium. and different bells and whistles. And so we'll be kind of picking the entire menu that's available to the co-op members, from a certain installer. So there'll be one installer that's in essence, the installer for the co-op. We'll be selecting that again. The committee members will be selecting that in August. We do the background checks, due diligence, reference checks, but ultimately you all members of the selection committee will pick the installer. Once the installer is selected, then they'll start reaching out to you and other co-op members and getting specific proposals for your roof and the specific package, menu package that you want, base model, premium model, what have you, and that'll be customized for you. And then, as I mentioned, you'll have about 30 days to sign the contract. We're here to support you. Happy to answer any questions that the installer can't do so. We'll also help you compare proposals that you receive outside the co-op. Whether we're doing a co-op or not, we'll do that at any point in time. And then installation usually occurs about 2 to 4 months after the contract is signed. There's permitting processes and other things, and then just like anything right now, trying to get somebody to your house to do some work can take a while. Folks are backed up, and that's true of solar installers as well. So if you're trying to get something installed by the end of the year, you certainly want to jump on it pretty quickly. And then once everybody has had their installations, again, some of those will probably drag into the new year. As I mentioned, we're open until November. And so probably next spring or so, we'll have a party to celebrate all the installations in the Hampton Roads area. All right, now we'll talk about solar technology. Was there any questions in the chat, Sukrit, that I need to go over?
So far, so good. We just had one question on, when we do have bids from installers, are they locally based? And the answer is most of them are usually in these co-ops. And although we do receive a handful of nationally based installers, the committee usually goes for the locally ones. So I've answered that, but yeah, besides, I know other questions.
Great, thanks. All right. Well, how do solar panels work, right? What is a solar panel? So today we're talking about solar photovoltaic, or PV, which converts solar energy to electricity. And this is the majority of today's solar market. There's also solar thermal technology, which can be a popular residential technology for heating a pool or other water sources, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about solar photovoltaic, or PV panels. At its most basic, here's a panel. You can see on the left kind of an image of it, and really that shows you that the panel is well protected. The solar cell there in the middle is really what helps capture and generate electricity. Panels historically have been about 3 feet by 5 feet. Now some of them grown about 4 to 6 feet, 4 by 6 feet, depends on the panel. Usually in the 40 pounds range. Most important to note is they're measured in wattage. And so when you get your proposal, it'll be in wattage. Silicon is really the dominant technology, and the panels are built to ensure a long life. They're hail resistant. They expect to get 25 years at least of a lifespan. And another important note on panels is they generate electricity in direct current, or DC. And we'll go over why that's important here in a bit. All right, so as I mentioned, a panel is measured in watts, just like a light bulb, but obviously a panel is much larger. So 1,000 watts equals 1 kilowatt, or 1 kW. And so when you get your proposal, your system size, customized to your house, will be measured in kW. So you might get a proposal for 3 kW or 7 kW or 12.4 kW. That's really the important number. It's not necessarily the number of panels that you have. And at its most basic, a 10 kW system will produce more power than a 5 kW system when everything is operating at its peak efficiency, right? So middle of the day, sunny day, all that sort of stuff. A 10 kW system is going to generate more electricity than a 5 kW system. Pretty straightforward. Your electricity, however, is measured in kilowatt hours or kWh. And this is what you're billed in, right? So if you have a bill from Dominion Energy or some other electric utility, every month you're going to see how many kWh or how many kilowatt hours you used. And that is just basically a measure of how much energy used over a period of time, right, in an hour. And alternatively, for your solar array, it'll also be how much electricity your solar array generates over a period of time. How much solar generates in an hour. And then to highlight my point about how it really, the wattage is most importantly, more so than the number of panels. In the example on the left, we have a 3.6 kW system. Again, that would be a small system, but some of y'all might have a 3.6 kW system with 300 watt panels. And we have 12 panels right here. And so alternatively, you could have 9 panels that are 400 watt panels, and that also would be a 3.6 kW system. So it doesn't really matter, again, 9 panels, 12 panels. The most important thing to know is how many watts or how many kW, how many kilowatts is your system capable of producing at peak performance. When the panels numbers do matter, it's when you have limited roof space, right? It might be that those 9 panels at 400 watts are more efficient. Well, they are more efficient because they're 400 watt panels versus 300 watt panels. And if you can only fit 9 panels on your roof because you're in a row house or you just have limited roof space, that's where it's really important to know how many panels you can have, and you want the higher efficiency panels. But we'll go over those things once you actually have a proposal in hand. And then some of the other important components after the panels are the inverter. So what an inverter does is it converts electricity from direct current DC to AC or alternating current. And this is really important because your house uses electricity, uses AC, alternating current electricity. So the inverter conditions the energy for use in your home. The installer will have probably 1 or maybe 2 different types of inverters that they'll suggest for your home. And the inverter is really the brain of your system. It kind of monitors production. If you have micro inverters, you can tell if your production goes down in any particular panel. Here in the illustration, we have a string inverter, which again is mostly on ground mounts. Not really going to see those on residential installs, but you can have a string inverter with DC optimizer or a micro inverter. Those are the 2 most common nowadays. And then finally, there's a racking system. How is the panel attached to a roof? Primarily, it's done to asphalt shingle roofs. That's the most common roof type we have here in Virginia. Pretty straightforward. There are roof penetrations into the roof to get the racking system installed. But solar will work on most roofs. Here we have a photo of a standing seam metal roof, also another great option for solar. This one actually does not have roof penetrations. So some folks kind of like that. It actually has clips on to the seams. A rubber membrane roof is also really good for solar. The one roof type that you want to watch out for is slate. Slate is really fragile and really tricky. And so many installers will not work on slate. And those that do will charge an upcharge to do so because it's a tricky install. And then finally, your solar array will hook into your electrical panel. Most panels don't need an upgrade, but it'll be very common for the installer to ask for a photo of your electrical panel. That'll be something that they're going to ask you to see your electricity bill and also to see a photo. So don't be surprised if they ask for a photo of the panel. Just going to want to make sure that they have space to add a breaker. If your panel is outdated, the installer will be able to recognize it quickly. Again, most homes don't need an upgrade, but if you do need an upgrade to a sub panel or something, usually it's not that big of a deal. And so the other important thing to note is your roof good for solar? And this is really more of an art than a science. Most important, we're in the northern hemisphere. You want your solar panels to face in the general direction of the equator. If you won the solar lottery, that would be you have a southerly facing roof that has great solar access. Again, west and east will also work, especially even west by northwest, where you're getting that good afternoon sun. You want to have little or no shading, especially between those peak hours of like 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. You want to have enough space to mount panels, as I mentioned earlier. Different panel efficiencies can change the number of panels measured. Also, you want to look, this is a flat roof in this photo, or not a flat roof, but a roof with no obstructions, like a chimney or dormers or gables. Those things can get in the way of solar panels. So you want to have, at least a couple hundred square feet of access and space on your roof for solar panels. And then you don't need a new roof by any means, but you want a newer roof without any major damage. We do recommend a minimum of 10 years of roof life remaining, because one of the biggest costs of solar is the labor of taking panels up to the roof and installing them. And, and if in a few years you're going to need a new roof or a major repair, you'd have to get the solar installer to go up there, take those down, store them for however long that work takes, and then put them back up. And so it's best to kind of do all that wrapped up in one. And then if you don't have a good roof for solar, or if you have the space and are interested, you can get a ground mounted system. This is hard to do probably if you're in Norfolk or Hampton or something like that. But if you're outside of town a bit, maybe down in Chesapeake or on the Eastern Shore, you might have the space for a ground mounted system. A ground mounted system has some really good benefits. One is you can orient it more towards the sun, right? You can kind of pick which direction it faces, and so get more of that southerly facing system. And it can, that way it's a lot more efficient, right, with the orientation. And so your production is a lot higher. But in exchange for that higher production, the installation cost is higher, right? When you think about it, on a rooftop solar, your panels mount to the roof and the roof is already there. Whereas in a ground mount, like in this system, there's a rack that has to be built. So there's labor to build that rack, and there's also parts, to build that rack. Additionally, wire needs to be run to the system from the meter. And assuming that's at the house or a barn or what have you, they're going to have to trench electrical line in the ground. We recommend not more than 50 to 100 feet, because you really start getting expensive after that. And so there's a bit more parts and materials and labor costs for a ground mount, but you can also significantly increase your production. So it's really up to you if you have the space. And some frequently asked questions about panels. What do the warranties cover? Again, most panels typically have a 25-year production warranty. They're going to maintain solid efficiency. Solar panels have no moving parts. There's not really a lot that can degrade or fail. Usually you'll get between 10 to 25 years of a manufacturer defect. That's like maybe a piece of metals hanging off the side. It doesn't affect the solar generation, but might just be there. The inverters, industry standard between 10 and 25 years, and then kind of a workmanship warranty from the solar installer on a roof penetration or something like that can be 3 or even more than 10 years of a warranty. Good news is if something's going to fail on a roof penetration or whatnot, usually it's going to happen in the first couple of years. On homeowners insurance, this solar panel has definitely become part of your home. We encourage you to contact your insurance company. We found that the industry standard is your rate should either not go up or go up very, very slightly. There is a national company or two that doesn't really understand that and does raise their rates a bit, we've heard secondhand. So if your company, if your insurer does propose a drastic increase in homeowners insurance, we encourage you to shop around, because that is definitely not the industry standard. In terms of maintenance, these are really maintenance free. You don't have to clear snow off them. We get plenty of rain. The rain will clean them. They're hail resistant. Again, we even have online monitoring now. You'll get this real cool app where you can see the production at just about any time of the day, and tell how your system's working. You should not get on your roof and deal with panels. These are not something you need to worry about. Again, systems last 25 years at a minimum, so more than 25 years. Will an HOA allow solar in your home? One of the things we've done as part of our fighting for energy rights is actually made it much easier for folks in HOAs to go solar. We passed a law a few years back that made it harder for HOAs to oppose unreasonable restrictions. And if you're in a historic district like Williamsburg or something like that, we encourage you to talk to your installer. They're really well versed in working in those areas and through the permitting process. All right. So here's some important terminologies, just a quick recap. Your solar array, solar panels on your roof, they generate solar electricity. They send it to an inverter, which changes it from DC to AC, so it's ready for your house. It flows through your electrical panel and ideally into your home. And if you have extra solar energy, it then flows through your meter onto the grid. And that brings us to net metering. So this is a little more detailed version of the last slide we saw. So your meter, which might have to be installed and your utility will do that, will become bidirectional. And that way it can tell if electrons are flowing onto the grid or if you're pulling electricity off the grid. And really what's happening at all times once your system's set up is there's a constant balancing act between the grid and your solar array, every minute, right? Every moment, I should say, to ensure there's the exact amount of electricity needed for your home at any one time. Your house has the right of first refusal for the solar electricity. So anything generated by your panels will go to your home first. And then if there is extra left over, it'll go onto the grid. If there's not enough generated, let's say your home's generating 50% of what you need, all that 50% will go into your house, and then the other 50% will be pulled from the grid to simultaneously so that you have 100% of your need. Again, a constant balancing act. And this is why you don't have to go all or nothing. You don't have to get 100% of your needs served by solar. I don't have that in my house. As an example, I've got about 2/3 of my needs met. It's drastically lowered my bills, but it hasn't wiped them out completely. But it's certainly very helpful. So, and generally during the daytime when you're generating a lot of solar, hopefully you're putting electricity onto the grid, and that's where you would be building up a surplus. It's a credit that you would get kind of like rollover minutes. And then when you need electricity from the grid at nighttime or on rainy days, what have you, you'll be pulling electricity off the grid and using up those credits. And again, in an ideal world, that balances out at the end of the month or at the end of the year, but it doesn't always work that way. And so just to recap on net metering, important to know it's a one-to-one credit. The credits you're getting when you put electricity onto the grid, so is kind of equal to the same amount of what you're pulling off the grid. So it's kind of equal in value to the electricity you're getting from Dominion, the electricity Dominion gets from you and your solar system. This is a really critical tool for rooftop solar. It's a fair credit. There are daily and seasonal surpluses, and this is why it's really important to look at an annual billing cycle because it's really seasonal. Like you'll see in the spring and the fall when you're not really using your air conditioning and not really using your heat. Those are two big electricity hogs. You'll probably be using a lot less electricity, and we get some good sunny days. And so you might be putting a lot more electricity onto the grid in the spring and the fall. Whereas in the summer, when you're cranking that AC, and in the winter, when you're cranking your heat, if you have electric heat, or also in the winter, the days are just a lot shorter. So there's fewer hours to generate sunshine, generate solar. You won't do as well. And so that's why we look at it on an annual basis. And then it's a percentage. And we have a whole a guide on this, and I think even an hour-long webinar just on net metering. So I have Sukrit put the net metering guide into the chat, and we'll keep on rolling. And this is just one quick kind of basic example of the effect of net metering on your electricity bill. So let's say you use 300 kilowatt hours, your system generates 250 kilowatt hours. So there's 50 kilowatt hours you pulled from the grid. You will only pay for those 50 kilowatt hours, plus a fixed connection charge, which in Dominion territory is $6.58 plus tax, so usually about $7 or $8 a month. That's if you were offsetting everything, you're going to pay $7 or $8 a month. But in this case, it would be plus the 50 kilowatt hours rather than the $300 that you've been paying before. And this is important to know because when you talk about how to pay back the system and the return on your investment, this is a key factor in paying it back. The surpluses are carried over month to month and on an annual basis. They can be wiped out at the end of the year if you have extra surpluses. That's a deeper, longer conversation, again, that would probably take a webinar that we have online to dig into that if you had such a large system that you're generating excess. Dominion and any utility doesn't really want you to have a surplus at the end of a 12-month cycle. Also important to note that your kind of annual date is not January 1st. It's based on the date that your system was installed, or actually when your system was authorized to operate by your utility. For me, that's in November. For you, it could be who knows when. It's not January 1. And so, but it doesn't really matter what date you have, but it's just important to know that it's not going to be January 1st. And now we'll move on to batteries. You know, and this is important to note, especially in Hampton Roads, right, is what happens when the power goes out. So it's kind of counterintuitive, but when the power goes out, you will actually not have access to your solar array. Your solar array will actually stop producing energy. And the reason for that is that it's a safety mechanism. As we talked, as I mentioned, your solar system is constantly in contact with the grid. And if it's generating excess energy, it's sending stuff onto the grid. And if there's a power outage and a lineman working on the lines to try to restore power, and your solar system is feeding the electricity on the grid, that would electrocute the line person, and you know, it'd have a big safety issue there. And so the inverters are constantly in communication with the grid, and they'll sense that the grid is out within seconds, instantaneously, and they will then shut down and no longer send electricity to your home or to the grid during an outage. Once the power is restored, the inverters will sense that, and then they'll fire back up and start generating electricity again, or passing the electricity through. So again, counterintuitive, important to note, if power goes out, you will not have electricity due to your solar array. However, if you want to have electricity due to your solar array, you can do so. It requires batteries. And so what happens in essence is there's like a closed loop or an island in essence of your electricity between your solar system and the battery array, so that when the power is out, you can operate solely on what you're generating between your solar panels and and storing in your batteries. So if your batteries are topped off during the day, and then the power is still out at night, you could be drawing down electricity from your batteries. In the future, or even the near future, as we're getting into electric vehicles, Ford F-150 Lightning and some of these other newer EVs potentially could power a home or power batteries during an outage. That's really kind of cutting edge technology. But it's also important to note you will unlikely be able to power your entire load, everything in your home, with your batteries. And so, as I mentioned, the HVAC systems are the biggest culprits, during an outage. So you have to set up and pick your load, and you would work this with an installer. But you likely be able to have, a few lights on, a few outlets, maybe your Wi-Fi, coffee pot, keep your fridge going, but probably not have your HVAC system running during an outage, unless you had a super efficient room and maybe a mini split in one room or something like that. So again, as we see, this graph here just kind of shows that since 2017, the major events that have led to power outages have dramatically increased, and all on Hampton Roads know that all too well. And so one of the reasons you might want batteries, again, if you have frequent outages, if you have a critical load at your house, like a well pump or medical equipment, if you're involved in emergency or disaster preparedness, those are some reasons you might want batteries. A disadvantage is they're really expensive. In the ballpark sense, it would double the cost of your solar installation. They're also really hard to get right now, just with supply chain. is really complex on batteries. A lot of installers have lengthy months and months long wait lists for batteries. They're also complex, right? There's a lot more things that can fail in a battery. And so, but if you're more interested in that, again, we have a whole webinar just on batteries on our website, and I'll have Sakrit put that into the chat. I know I've been talking a lot, so I will take a break here and see if there's any questions.
Sure. We did have a fair amount of questions. I think I answered most of them. Just letting everyone know, I will be sending out a recording, a copy of the recording tomorrow, and it's going to have the chat section, so you're not missing anything. And one of the questions I could not answer, Ben, was in the event of a hurricane, let's say it damages the system, do you know which component of the warranty covers this? I think it varies for each installer, but do you know the answer to
that? Yeah, I would think it probably depends is the answer. My most likely would be the homeowner's insurance, right? Mm-hmm. Just if it's damaging your roof and other things that are on your roof, as I mentioned, the array becomes part of your roof. And so if there's any wind damage, hurricane damage to the array, that would be likely covered under your homeowner's insurance. The warranties and whatnot for the panels and the inverters, et cetera, are, if they fail due to kind of natural reason, right? Like an inverter fails, it's a little mini computer up on, and each panel might have one. And so if they fail, like any other electronic device might fail over time. But yeah, if there's hurricane damage, that would likely be covered under homeowner's insurance.
Perfect. And just a quick follow-up. Do you know the wind rating on these panels? I mean, I think a couple of people pointed out in the chat that it's around 150 miles per hour, but
I think that's accurate. I believe they are rated around that. I mean, we've been installing solar panels in Puerto Rico as one of the states or provinces that we work in. And it's certainly, and also we're starting to do a little bit in Hawaii. And so places that are used to very strong winds. On all the spec sheets for the panels, when we get the actual bids, they'll have all that information. And maybe Sakrit, if we can make a note to flag that and add that in the bid review sheet for the selection committee meeting, since in the Hampton Roads region, that's a really relevant point. But yes, I believe 150 miles an hour is kind of a standard.
Absolutely. Okay, I have a couple more questions, but I'll answer them. You can get on with it.
Sounds good. Perfect. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so now we will move to electric vehicles, and we encourage you to install an EV electric vehicle charger as part of the co-op. We really view solar as a local fuel source. You're kind of driving on sunshine is the way to look at it, and it feels really good, especially nowadays with how expensive gas is. And so getting an EV charger is certainly something you can add on as part of the co-op. And to pair solar with EV, this is a kind of a national graph, and the numbers are rough, but just to give you a quick sense of it, if gas is $4 a gallon, which obviously it's higher than that right now. A standard car might cost you $1,800 a year in gas, whereas an EV powered by solar, again, these are just general numbers, might cost you $415. Dominion says that charging an EV via the grid is $1 a day. I think they assume 40 miles driven in a day. Obviously, every EV is different in terms of its performance in batteries. Some folks say that an EV costs $1 a gallon. So there's a lot of different numbers out there. I think the most important thing to know is they're all significantly cheaper than $4 a gallon, right? Whether it's $1 a gallon, $1.50 a gallon, $1 a day, a lot better deal, than using gas. So certainly encourage you all to pair a EV charger with your system, and hopefully add an EV when you're able. The EV chargers that would be added for the home installation are what's known as a level 2 charger. That requires a 240 volt outlet, which is similar to your dryer or something like that. And so the charging speeds are going to be about 6 times or up to 6 times as fast as a standard 120 volt outlet. Depending on your battery, it can be 10 to 30 miles an hour of a charge. Typically, there's a 3-year warranty on these. If you are thinking about getting an EV charger installed, just some things to consider, before you talk to the installers, where do you want it? Is it an interior? Do you have a garage space, or is it an exterior driveway or something else? So that would also be a wall mount or a pedestal mount. Do you have electric service? As I mentioned before, you're going to need a breaker space in your panel for your solar array. Additionally, you would need some panel space for your EV charger. Also, how far is the charger from your panel? Is it nearby, or is it way across your house? And that can make a difference on installation costs, right? It depends on how much pipe and how many walls the electricians have to break through and all that sort of stuff. Networking capability, Wi-Fi capability is kind of best practice, a great way to monitor your EV and other things. You want to make sure you have enough cord length to reach your car from where the EV charger is installed. Public access, are you in a shared housing space, an apartment, what have you? Do you park on the street? Those are all kind of important factors. And then aesthetics, right? You like the way the charger is and looks, and we'll be happy to have it. For an EV charger cost, usually the unit might be $500 to $700, or certainly can go a lot more. Installation, again, depending on how far they have to run pipe and all those kind of things, how difficult the install is, can be $500 to $2,000. So usually you're looking at $1,000, maybe $2,500 for kind of the basic standard stuff. There was a federal tax credit that expired on December 31st of last year. There is some hope that it will be resurrected, as Congress is debating these various clean energy tax credits. This summer, hopefully we'll have some resolution on that here in the next few weeks or months. So it's possible this tax credit will be restored for this year, but there's certainly no guarantee. I would certainly just encourage you to save any receipts in that regard. And then finally, it brings us to solar economics and how to pay for solar and what solar costs. Just real quick, you can see from this graph that the costs of solar from the 1970s to today have dropped dramatically. And really, even since 2010, they've dropped 73%. Solar is a long-term investment. Again, no moving parts, 25-year lifespan. It's a great way to hedge against rising utility rates. I think I saw a month or two ago that Dominion mentioned they're going to be raising rates 9 to 10% because the cost of natural gas is going up, right? And so, as I mentioned, if you have a solar array that's generating all of your electricity, or even 50% of your electricity, you're not paying for the rise in electricity from Dominion on the electricity you're using from your home. And so the cost of solar never increases. So this is a great way to hedge against some rising rates. The average return on investment in Virginia can be 9 to 13 years, although as the costs go up dramatically of grid electricity, that return on investment will pay back even faster. You can see the breakdown on cost of solar right here. The soft costs are pretty significant. That's how do folks, the companies find customers, right? How long does it take them to educate folks? And that's really what we do as an organization. And you can see that's where we really bring our value, and why we can help get such a lower price for members is because we really reduce the soft costs for the solar installers. Labor costs are pretty standard. You're not really going to be able to change that. And then system components, that's your panels and your inverters and whatnot. And the cost of everything has gone down since 2010 as things have gotten more efficient and whatnot. Although soft costs has stayed pretty true. Here's an example price sheet. I don't want you to get lost in the numbers here. I just want you to be able to understand your bid when you get it. So I'm just going to show you how your system's priced and how it pays you back so that when you get a proposal, you'll be able to understand it. We've got, really basic stuff like net cost, your net revenue or your profit, and that's your payback. These are turnkey systems. This is plus tax. This includes permitting costs, everything under the sun. There's no hidden fees after this. These are turnkey systems, final prices. And again, the numbers are less important than understanding how it's paid back. So we're going to look at the right-hand column, the 8 kW system, is that's a fairly common size. And so in the the first column we have is a solar co-op pricing. Let's say it's $275 a watt. 8 kW is 8,000 watts. 8 kW, so 8,000 times 275 is $22,000. 4 kW would be the same, just half the cost. So then you take that $22,000, you subtract the 26% federal tax credit. Very important to know that this is a tax credit, not a refund. So you must have the tax liability to take advantage of this. So in this case, it's a $5,700 tax credit, and so when you're paying your taxes in 2023, right, in January, February, March, April of 2023, you will apply this 26% tax credit off the cost of your system, assuming you have a federal tax liability of $5,700. If you don't have that tax liability in 1 year, that's okay. You can roll it over and stretch it out over 5 years. And it's important to know that the tax credit is based on the investment, right? It's based on how much money your system costs. All the other stuff that's below the net cost line is based on the production of your system. And so it's a lot more variable. So we have estimated year one electricity savings, $1,100. Again, that's how much you're not paying to Dominion from long ago, because your system, many slides ago, because your system is producing 50%, 75% of your electricity. You are no longer paying that to Dominion. So your savings would be $1,100 in a year. Let's say it's 11,700 in 10 years. That it's not 1,100 times 10, because the cost of electricity increases 2 to 3% a year. Very conservative estimate. As I just mentioned, electricity is going up 9 or 10% this year. We're using a conservative 2 to 3% per year. And so your 10 years electricity savings, 11,700. Over 25 years, that's over $32,000. And so you can see the savings is significant over 25 years. And even after 10 years, it's pretty significant as well. And then there's something called a solar renewable energy credit, or a SREC. This is another complicated thing that we have an hour-long webinar on, but it's at its most basic. As you generate renewable energy, solar energy on your roof, you in essence become a mini power plant. And there's credits, offset credits, renewable energy credits that you earn by that generation. And in Virginia, those have value because we have a law that requires a certain amount of electricity every year to be generated from renewable resources. And so Dominion might want to buy that from you. Maybe Amazon or Walmart or somebody else might want to buy that because they want to use, quote unquote, 100% renewable energy generated in Virginia. And so there is a market for the credit that you are given. There's companies a few different companies that are SREC brokers, and we have all that on our website. This is not, over the top money, but this is certainly kind of a nice to have. We put the SREC credit at $200. I think that's pretty conservative. The SRECs right now are trading at about $50 or so, and you'll generally get one SREC per 1 kW. So your 8 kW system would more or less generate 8 SRECs in a year, although that's, could be 7, could be 9. And so if they're at $50 a pop, you might get $400, and you'll get those every quarter as they're traded. And again, we have a guide on that, and Sakrit can talk about that. But this, again, is important. This is on generation of your system, production of your system. And so you can see the kind of the total payback over 25 years, is over $20,000. And these are conservative estimates on the cost of electricity and on the SRECs. But certainly there's a significant savings over the life of it. But we understand it's a big upfront cost, and not everybody's in a position to do so. So financing is a really important thing. Before I dig into that, just one quick note about the federal tax credit. It is decreasing. So right now in 2022, it's 26%. Next year in 2023, it goes down to 22%. And then as of now, it's zero for residential systems in 2024. This is another one that's currently being debated in Congress and whatnot, that hopefully will be continued. Important to note that the date of your installation, the date your installation occurs, is the date that you can take the tax credit. So if your system is installed by December 31st of this year, then you can get the 26% credit. If you're not installed until January 1 or beyond of next year, you would be taking the 22% credit. Again, you do that when you're filing your taxes. Encourage you to talk to accountants, whatnot. Yeah, that's where we're at with the federal tax credit right now. And again, so if you want to get installed by December 31st, I think some folks in this group should be able to make that, but it's probably going to be the first handful of folks that sign up and sign their contract, pretty quickly, because as we mentioned before, it's usually a 2 to 4 month wait. So not big pressure. And, the difference between 26 and 22 is probably $500 or less than 1,000. So, when you're talking about a $20,000 system or something like that, it's not the deal breaker, but certainly something to consider. And then in terms of financing options, there's a lot of ways you can finance a system. Home equity line of credit, you can refinance and include solar. There's also other loan types that we have on our website. There's a couple of co-ops, credit unions that specialize in solar. And also the installer likely offers financing. We do have a financing guide in our chat. The return on investment can take longer. But most importantly, we encourage folks to shop around and get multiple bids and multiple quotes. And with that, I will pause for questions.
Yeah, I do have a couple of interesting questions. The first one is, let's see. So do you know if there are any savings in air conditioning because the panels shade the roof?
So the panels will shade the roof a bit and keep the rooftop a bit cooler. So if you're, I guess it depends on where your air conditioner, if you're conditioned up to your rooftop, like for me, I have an attic and I'm not conditioning my attic. And so I don't think it really would make much of a difference. But if you have kind of exposed ceilings and you are conditioning that space up to the roof, I think there could be a slight benefit. I wouldn't think it's going to be drastic or significant, but it would keep the roof a bit cooler because it is an extra layer between the roof. Additionally, it kind of will make your roof last a bit longer as well, as it protects your roof from rain and snow and other elements. And so, yeah, it's another layer of protection on your roof.
Perfect. And the second question we have is involving legislation. So is there something in 2023 that you would like the General Assembly to pass?
That's a great question. I would encourage you to sign up for our solar advocacy team. It's not something that we're able to answer right now. We're still kind of working on our 2023 legislation. And I know we just have about 5 minutes left and I want to save time for Ruth. So, but we certainly work on advocacy, and in September, we'll be renewing our advocacy monthly meeting. And so encourage you to sign up for that.
And I can drop that link in the chat as well. So
great.
Perfect. That's all I have.
Excellent. Well, I will turn it over to Ruth, who has some wonderful financing options. Ruth, do you need to show slides?
Yeah, if I could share my screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will stop sharing and hopefully you can share if this works.
Yeah, just, here we go. Right, you see my screen?
Yes.
So another way of financing solar is called a power purchase agreement. And that's most often used on businesses and nonprofits. But the group I'm with did the first install of solar on a home with a power purchase agreement. And the way a power purchase agreement works is the financer buys and owns the solar, and the resident pays the financer back out of their electricity savings. And so there's never any money out of pocket for the resident. In Virginia, it's only allowed, this power purchase agreement method is only allowed with residents who qualify as low income. And I have the income levels up there based on the size of your household. And if you're close, this does come from line 15 of your tax form, which is your taxable income. So if you are under those income limits, or if you know somebody that is, we can get financing for any low income residents that want to do solar as part of this co-op. Just to sort of show you where that comes from, when the business is putting up the solar and owning it, they can take not only the 26% tax credit, but they can also take depreciation. So they are getting back roughly 56% of the installation cost as soon as they file taxes. And then they're getting an income from the homeowner, which is from the electricity savings. So I own probably 12 different solar installs that I have power purchase agreements with, and all of mine are 8 years or less for the payback time. So it would be a power purchase agreement for 8 years. And after that time, the homeowner would own the solar and get all the savings from it. So it actually pays off faster than buying it yourself and taking the tax credit. I said we did the first home in Virginia that was done with this. This was the second home we've done. We've since then done quite a few homes. This is Norfolk Solar QOZ Fund is one that's done a lot of commercial as well. And then this is some of the pictures of some of our installs. One of the other things we did at Norfolk Solar is we required that the installer hire folks from these disadvantaged neighborhoods to be installers. So we've gotten some of the first installers of color in Hampton Roads as part of this program. So that is, and unfortunately I can't use a power purchase agreement to finance solar on a home if they don't qualify as low income. I can drop our website in the chat, but you would have to qualify under these limits, and I'm happy to send people information if they want to contact me offline. And it is an addition of all the income in your house. For instance, we're doing one right now. There's 4 people in the house and 3 of them have income. So we have to add up the incomes of all 3 of them off their tax forms that's on line 15 and make sure they fit under the 74,800. That's the limit for a 4-person household. I don't know if I can see the chat, but are there questions in the chat that I should try to address?
No, you're good. No questions so far.
Okay. Right. Well, I wanted to try to fit under the hour, so
Great.
I slid us in.
Appreciate it, Ruth. And I just want to emphasize how tremendous this is, and thanks to Ruth for joining. And this is the only co-op that this is being offered in Virginia, and probably just about one of the only co-ops in the country that we're doing that has a low income financing option. And so it's really a tremendous opportunity. And so I encourage you all, if you know homeowners, doesn't need to be a homeowner, I believe. If you know homeowners,
yeah, it can be a renter, but I've given up on trying to do renters because then you have to get the agreement from the owner, and it's just a rat's nest. So I would much rather do homeowners.
So if you know anybody in Hampton Roads that qualifies as low income, and again, I mean, it's 7 cities, even in probably to the southern eastern shore, pretty general in the Hampton Roads region. It's a tremendous opportunity. And so encourage you to let folks know, to get in touch with us, get in touch with Ruth, because it's a great way for folks of low income to get solar. And as she said, own the system outright in 8 years or so. And then it's just, in essence, free electricity beyond that, which is just tremendous. I did see some stuff coming in the chat, Ruth.
Yeah, we did get a question from Susan about whether this would work for a church parsonage.
Yep. Yeah, it works for a church. I don't know if VA Sun wants to make churches part of this co-op, but it definitely works for nonprofits. It's actually really effective for nonprofits because a nonprofit can't obviously take any tax breaks, either the ITC, the investment tax credit, or depreciation. So it takes a much longer time for solar to pay off on a nonprofit. We've done several nonprofits, churches, Boys and Girls Clubs. It definitely works for a church.
Yeah, in terms of Virginia Sun being interested, I think we would absolutely be interested in helping a project with a church. Sometimes it doesn't fit into the co-op model because they can pay different electricity rates or whatnot, but I would just need to talk to the installer and make sure that that works for them as well. We generally say this is for residential and small commercial, but if it didn't work as part of the co-op, we could certainly kind of do it as an addendum on the side or something like that. Great question, Susan.
And just to be clear, there's no income limit. If they're a nonprofit, they don't have to qualify as low income or be in a special neighborhood. It works for any nonprofit.
And Ruth's done a lot of nonprofits and schools and other things across Hampton Roads. So a lot of experience with this. All right. Well, thank you, Susan. So yeah, we'll be in touch. As I mentioned, or as Sucrit mentioned, he'll be sending this out tomorrow. I want to thank everybody for joining us. In terms of what you can do next, again, certainly encourage you to join the co-op if you've not done so already, and tell your friends, be a smart consumer. We do have a Facebook page and a listserv if you want to get technical on the listserv, or the Facebook just for events and that sort of thing. Maybe Sucrit, you can drop that in the chat.
You can drop it right now.
And with that, get your friends and family to join the co-op. And also a reminder that we'll have the selection committee. I think we'll be setting that up for mid-August sometime. We're still kind of finalizing that date. And that'll just be via Zoom on a weeknight. If you're interested in digging through the bids that we receive and really getting really deep in the weeds on solar pricing and all that sort of stuff. If you enjoy that, I'll be there. Sucrit will be there. Great way to spend a couple hours. So with that, thank you all for your time this afternoon. I really appreciate it. And we look forward to working with you, and I hope to be doing some in-person events, I think, in September. And so if you're still TBD on the location, I know Hampton Roads with traffic and all that sort of thing, really depends on where we are. But we hope to hit kind of all sides of the water in September and October for some information sessions in person, and look forward to seeing you all in person if possible. So thanks so much, and have a great afternoon. Thanks, Ruth. Thanks, Sucrit.
Thank you, everyone.